Hi, and welcome to your one-stop location for workable solutions to your workplace relationship challenges. I'm Dr. Jacqueline Huggins, and welcome to another learning session. Today I'm going to talk about communication etiquette for the virtual world or workplace. More of us are working in a virtual environment now more than ever. So I'm going to share some tips on how best to communicate in such a space. This list will not be an entire list of all things to take into account when you're working virtually, but it's a good start. And as a footnote, make all necessary changes, adaptations with this information according to the criteria of your organizational culture and the needs of your team. First, adhere to the facilitator's rules for engagement for virtual meetings. Virtual meetings cannot be held in exactly the same way as face-to-face meetings. Of course, what I'm about to say need not be said, but I'll say it anyway. Instead of being on time, be early. That way you can troubleshoot potential technical issues and, of course, settle your mind with a sense of readiness for the meeting. Consider how the facilitator or administrator would like to handle things. For example, how would he or she like to handle the chat feature and the taking of questions? Now, with some virtual meetings, there will be someone to manage the chat feature, but this is not always the case. So use the chat feature in a limited way so as not to cause undue confusion or communication overload. As a participant, you want to keep the questions or statements short and simple and applicable to the point that's being made at that time. The administrator may have ideas on how to deal with questions across the platform. If that's you, have a limit to the number and the types of questions that will be accepted, with an explanation on how other questions will be dealt with. As a participant, if you have any additional or ancillary questions or statements, place them to the side for attention later. Everyone should know, though, how and when those questions or statements will be handled. If you are asked to speak, be ready to take over and speak when called upon. Adhere to the allotted time you've been given. Speak at a moderate to slow rate, articulate and pause in between your sentences to offset transmission delays or technical hiccups along the way. And last, in most cases, please do mute your microphones to eliminate that background noise. Mute video if you know you'll lose credibility with it on. But in general, if you're asked to join a virtual meeting, the expectation is that you'll be available through audio as well as video. Next, create an aesthetically pleasing background. So let's take a look at an example. What are your thoughts about this home office? What does it infer about the person's abilities, expertise? Usually a cluttered office of this type indicates lack of focus, confusion, poor attention to detail, and the list goes on. It does not indicate a sense of busyness or professional engagement. Now, it could be the space of an eccentric or a creative soul, but overall it indicates a lack of readiness, preparedness, and willingness to work. It's necessary to maintain an office space with a background that viewers can see and feel welcome in, as opposed to feeling like an imposition. Think about the last time you went to a friend's house for dinner. While you may have had a great time, perhaps the best part of the evening was when you were back in the comfort of your own home. Meaning at some point you may have felt not as comfortable being there as when you're home. So understand that you are inviting others into your personal space, just as if you were hosting them in person as a guest. And guests in general tend not to feel as comfortable as you think. So please put people at ease as much as possible by creating a space that creates virtual cohesion and inclusion with other team members, with their professional space, but uniquely designed. Doing so creates a stronger sense of togetherness with mutual objectives that drive the team towards achieving results, both in each team member's minds as well as in that shared virtual space. So don't forget to close off your space in some way as well and keep members or family members out. Perhaps place a sign on the door indicating active work hours and notify your family not to interrupt unless it's an emergency or for designated reasons only. It may seem cute, even personable, to have a child run through while you're in a virtual meeting, but it does distract from developing results-driven moments. Dress appropriately. Not much needs to be said here, but refrain from working in your robe or other super casual attire, whether you're in a virtual meeting or not. What you wear will tend to influence the degree to which you can engage in objective-driven, work-related, critical thinking. You may feel more comfortable in your robe, your favorite pair of boxer shorts or bunny slippers, but that attire prepares your mind and your emotions for offline leisure, rest, and relaxation. At the end of the day, do what's comfortable for you and acceptable to your organization. But I do ask that you take this tip into consideration and see the merit in how what we wear at any given moment in time will affect what we say, how we say it, and how we come across in interactions. In virtual spaces, it's much harder to fully understand what a person really means, even though they've spoken clearly. So it's important that you use all external factors to support you when you're communicating, to ensure clarity, whether in a virtual space, emailing, or speaking by phone. Your attire matters. Fundamentally, you will behave more professionally, speak more professionally, when you are wearing professional attire. Next, avoid non-essential behavior. When in a meeting, for example, always avoid eating during that meeting. But avoid eating at your computer except during designated breaks, even if you're not in a meeting. It divides your focus. It's actually a response to anxiety, and it distracts your thinking and decision making. Try not to multitask, meaning vacillating between doing something for work and doing something for personal. Understand that working virtually means you are working, but just not in the brick and mortar where your business is located. If you really need to take some time to take care of personal matters, then block that on your schedule as non-negotiable, meaning you cannot work at that time. Simply put, you want to avoid doing anything that will distract your focus from work-related matters. Now, let's talk email, and I'll touch on phone a bit too. Emailing is a strong tool that's excessively used for many remote employees. So it's important that when you use this tool, you use it with care and with the proper etiquette. So here are some reminders on the basics. Keep emails short and to the point. Avoid capitalizations and bold emphasis. Open with a simple greeting, end with a warm close. As you can see, I have a cup here in my hand. If I poured liquid in this cup and kept pouring liquid in this cup, what would happen? An overflow, you're probably thinking, and you are correct. The important question here is, what would the overflow create? It would create a mess that you would have to clean up. Now let's extrapolate to email. Email has a limited capacity to carry meaning, and if you use it outside of its capacity, it will create an overflow. The overflow will create a mess that you will need to clean up. With communication, though, really, there's no such thing as a cleanup, because once something is said, once something is done, once something is read, it becomes a permanent record in the history of that relationship in that person's mind. There are very few messages you can send in an email without the need for clarification, with additional communication. And it's very easy to offend and use words in such a way that cause disagreeableness between respondents. Let's take a look at a poor example. You never send your input about the client's order, so I don't have an answer for you at this time. You'll have to check back later after I get it. This email is problematic, first because it opens up with the words "you never." As soon as you open up most messages with the word you, you're automatically coming across as combative and judgmental, accusatory. So you're already stimulating defensive posturing and pushback to what you have to say. Second, this other sentence reads, "I don't have an answer for you at this time." That statement indicates divisiveness and a lack of cooperation on your part. The next line, "You'll have to check back later," indicates go away. I don't want to help you right now. These are the types of messages recipients ingest once they've read this kind of email. Yet it seems so simple, concrete, fact-based, yet offensive, which inhibits or slows productions due to feelings of offensiveness that the email fostered. Now, let's take a look at a better example with a few minor tweaks. "I haven't received your input about the client's order. I'm working on this and will provide more concrete information for you once I receive your input." Let's take a look at what's different here. The email opens with the words, "I haven't received." So this respondent is speaking from their personal experience of the matter, rather than attacking the person for not doing something. You see, the respondent can't speak to whether or not the person sent the input. They don't have that personal experience or knowing per se. The respondent can only speak to the fact that they didn't receive it. And this is the goal when communicating. Address the facts without attacking the person. This is why it's important that you open up with the word "I" as opposed to "you," because it shows you are taking responsibility for your own experience without judging the other person or being accusatory. Now, before I close out this tip, I just want to add reminders about the phone. Smile. Sit up in your chair when you're speaking to someone on the phone. Your nonverbal communication drives your word choices and your tone of voice. Allow the other person to complete their thoughts before you respond with questions and statements. And understand that phone conversations may take longer to get to clarity of a message, because similar to email, the full scope of nonverbal signaling of meaning just isn't available. You may want to view my video on how to listen and use the applicable tips for handling phone conversations. While you may not be face to face with a person, still remain still, focused nonetheless. I'll link that video here. So let's recap. Follow the facilitator's rules for engagement for virtual meetings. Stay engaged, remain seated and focused. Have an aesthetically pleasing background so others feel welcome and comfortable in your space when you're in view. Dress professionally, avoid non-essential or non-work related behavior, and use email and phone calls with the proper etiquette. So thanks for joining me today. I hope these tips will be helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and tell a friend. I choose to learn.com.